the aftermath. There's the old stand. That's a casualty. We won't talk about that. So here's some tools. Turns out that flywheel that I had intended to use off of ZX, so that I had that installed, I had to uninstall it. We see your heat shield. You got your heat shield, you got your radiator, you got your book, you got your persuader, miscellaneous tools. The engine is in. This is the engine that was got the MN47 head, the Maxima head on an N42 block. I still have to put the radiator in. I've got to put the alternator. I'll put the alternator in first, so there's more working room. I'll bolt in the compressor because there's more working room. Then I'll put the radiator. You know, first you get the money, then you get the radiator. Starter's missing. I've got to put the starter in. Tools are everywhere. It's just, it's a free-for-all. Okay, it's cat scratch fever, baby. So, with the turbo engine's not, okay, here's the old engine that came out. This is the numbers matching engine that came out of the car. I put it on this stand rather than my run stand because the whole point is to work on this engine now. I'm going to pull off the head, take out the pistons, look at the rings, try to figure out if I can account for why I'm burning oil in the first place. Okay, that was the whole, that was the primary motivator, make this happen. All right, so that'll happen. Cherry picker was involved. Now, let me tell you give you a little heads up. I originally had decided that it would be a good idea to remove the engine and leave the transmission in. Well, that turned out to be not such a wise idea. As it turns out, there are just way too many variables to, I had someone come over and help me, thanks Ian, come over and help me do this. Without his help, you know, it would have been a disaster. With his help, we were able to get this whole process done in 1 hour, but we did have to concede to the futility of attempting to reinstall. Taking the engine out with the transmission in place was no big deal, obviously. Getting it to go back in was a whole another level of effort. There, a whole quantum leap. We just could not get the angles to line up between the motor mounts, getting around the compressor, and mating it to the transmission with the engine. The engine constantly wants to lean over a little bit. Using the way the mounts are on the engine, it tends to want to sit upright. It just got to be too much. Okay, it just was not happening. So after about I'm guessing an hour and a half of attempted maneuvering, trying to figure out how to make it work, we finally just threw in the towel and said, screw it, we're taking the transmission out. So exhaust system came out, transmission came out. There's a transmission jack. Everything came, and honestly, taking the transmission out, you know, all you got to do is get a heat shield out. You got to undo 4 drive bolts. You got to undo the center, the main support and the center section of the transmission. You know, it's like 3 bolts, and then the transmission's out of there. Okay, so I think it probably took me maybe an hour and a half to get the entire transmission out of the way, and then putting the engine in. I wouldn't say it was simple, but it was definitely doable. I don't know. Maybe it took us 30 minutes once we did that to get everything lined up and get the motor mounts to work. So, you know, infinitely easier. The other way was infinitely impossible. All right. So anybody who's thinking about doing something like this, okay, if you like win the lottery every time you buy a ticket, go for it. All right. Otherwise, I would do definitely. I guess you could take the trans out with the engine. I didn't like that idea. It just kind of scared me. But it certainly isn't that hard to remove the transmissions from these. Just drop them down, push them out of the way, and then you're good to go, okay? I did use my guide pins, my patented guide pins right here. Okay, these plug into the transmission block and help you line. You put 2 of them in like diagonal on the bell housing. or in the block, and you slide the bell housing over it. I think that helps a lot. Gets the proper clocking of the transmission, helps you with the alignment of the dowel pins, which this engine does have the proper dowel pins in it. There's a big fat dowel pin and a little small dowel pin. So that's all done. I've put all the wiring back together pretty much. I think I still have the engine harness on this side to do, but all the EFI stuff's done. I've got to rehook up the exhaust pipe, obviously. I've got to tighten all the bolts. I don't try to tighten every single bolt. My theory is I would end up missing one. So I just get everything as hand tightened in, loosely tightened, and then I go through every single nut and bolt on the stinking car and check it. Okay, that's my approach to making sure I don't have any missing bolts. You know, I just don't trust myself not to miss something. So I got to go through like the engine mounts, the distributor, all the little bolts on the sides for all the little fittings and whatnot, all the fuel lines, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff's going to get checked and done again. So that's all good to go. So my plan now is to do that, reinstall the exhaust pipe. I got to do some welding there to fix that. I won't go into that, but it needs some welding work. And then we'll recommission the car with hopefully a higher compression, more powerful, more fuel efficient, naturally aspirated engine. Okay. I'm not quite committed yet to doing the turbo. The turbo is a great idea, but it's not as plug and play as this. You still have to make some electrical modifications with the turbo. This one literally is using the same distributor, the same intake and exhaust manual, everything that was done. It's just, I just basically took, you know, this long block. This is what went in, okay? Everything else stayed there. So only the long block went in. All the accessories, all the electronics, and all the fuel stuff stayed with the car. I thought that would be a fair comparison to do to compare the two engines. You know, just the only thing that's different is the pump, okay? There's a different air pump. See how the air pump works. So we'll go through. There were no casualties to the car. Thankfully, I'm always happy that I didn't like ding anything or put any holes in it. I'm always happy about that. Like I said, all I got to do is get her and finish bolting up the drive shaft. It's only loosely bolted in right now, and I kind of ran out of energy to finish the job. If you've done that before, you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of tough to get in there and tighten those bolts up. Go through and tighten up, get the transmit. I did not pull out the center console. You don't have to do that. For those of you who are doing transmission drops, you can literally pull the Jesus clip off the bottom of the transmission where the pivot pin is, knock out the pivot pin, and then leave the entire shifter assembly and console intact. There's no reason to go through and remove that shifter, okay, and that whole console. It just comes up and it's out of the way for removing the transmission. So that's just a little tip. If you don't know what a Jesus clip is, it's also called a Sir clip, but they tend to pop and get lost, and the first thing out of your mouth is, oh, Jesus, you know. Anyway, so I've got a whole pile of parts over here to put back on. You know, all this kind of goodness. All right. But everything's organized, bagged and tagged and ready to go, so I don't anticipate any real issues there. And hopefully, maybe by the end of tomorrow, I'll have it all buttoned back up and ready to go, but for that little bit of exhaust pipe welding I have to do. I'm really happy with it came out. My helper Ian was fantastic. You know, he really helped a lot. It's great having him over, and it's always good to have an extra set of hands and somebody else to help you think through a process so you don't do anything stupid. You know, like me, I tend to get stupid and start hurting myself if I'm not careful. Ian's a little more safety conscious. Good for him. And it kind of reminds me, hey Dave, maybe it's not a good idea to stick your hand into this gigantic monster thing that's going to happen. Okay. So anyway, get the engine back in. That's pretty simple. Like when the transmission is backed off, you put a jack on the back of the engine. You know, while it's still on the cherry picker, drop it into place. Get the bolts. Use a little alignment tool like a Phillips head screwdriver. Kind of line up the engine mounts. Get the bolts started. Put a jack on the pan of the engine. Take some of the weight off. Disconnect the cherry picker. Now the engine's sitting relatively flat. It's a good idea if you can remember about the distance you're looking at, like about 2-finger distance between that and the top of your cylinder head. If you're the valve cover, if you're wondering, right? About 2-finger distance between that is about right, just for future reference. You get that at about the right attitude, then you take the transmission and you mate it up. And it took us, it wasn't that bad. I mean, 2 or 3 tries and bang, it was in. I had Ian, he was working the crankshaft with the 27 mil to move it back and forth, wiggle that to help with the input shaft mating into the clutch. That worked out real well. And it was no drama. The guide pins helped though. Like I said, those guide pins that mount in there help to clock the transmission. Once you get them, they stick out like 3 inches. So before the input shaft is even getting near the pilot bushing, those guide pins have already got you clocked and aligned, 90% of the way. So just a little bit of shaking, usually you get right back on there. So anyway, that's it. Just to prove I actually did this work. Well, I hope my battle scars come through. We took a real beating. All right, not gonna lie. I like that. I'm not gonna lie. Like I always lie, right? I hate that saying. Don't ever say I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. It was a battle. All right, this part was tough, especially in the dark hours. It was like freaking Dunkirk here when we couldn't get the damn engine to go back into the transmission and try to mate them together. Like I said, that was just not happening. Okay, that was a losing battle. So had to fall back and regroup. But anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for coming along on the journey, and hopefully that boy will be back on the road in another couple of days, and I'll report back on the oil consumption. I don't know about this engine's oil consumption. I'm hoping it's okay. We don't know. We'll find out. And eventually I'll get to working on the original engine. That'll be an upcoming series, of course, and probably be 6 months, a year, I don't know. Eventually I'll get around to putting that turbo in there. I'm in no hurry to do that. Honestly, I kind of like just go out and start it and listen to it run, so yeah, it's kind of weird. It makes you happy. But anyway, eventually I'll get that in, but I think I mentioned it before on prior videos. I'm not going to do that until I completely have the wiring harness set up so it's a literal plug and play. I don't like having wires hanging all over the place. It's going to be, I plug this into the dash and it's going, and it works. Everything works just like it's supposed to. And there's few little tweaks you have to do to the existing wire harness that came with that engine that I'm using the EFI system on. I've been going back and forth on whether or not I want to go with an aftermarket EFI, but frankly, a lot of stuff I don't like about them. They're expensive, that's cool, and I'm sure they work great, but so does that. Frankly, that works really pretty darn well. A lot of them have kind of hinky idle air control systems that I'm not real happy with. Some of the cheaper versions, there doesn't appear to be any idle air control. You just do an idle air bypass and you set your idle up high idle, or maybe you adjust the spark advance to increase the high. It seems kind of hokey. That one's got a legit idle air control valve on it. It's like a pulse width modulated situation. It's kind of complex, it's kind of vacuum operated, a lot of weirdness going on, but hey, it works. It's kind of cool, I like it. And like I said, based on the wideband, it looks like it's very efficient, at least in the idle setting. I don't want to do it when it gets on the regular driving, but so anyway, I kind of like that. I'm not willing to jump that just to go for an aftermarket, until I know that that's not going to work. So anyway, but that's, like I said, not to digress, but that's some time off. That's going to take a while before I feel like I'm really ready to do that. I'm just not there. Anyway, I got to clean this mess up now, so we'll get back to it. Okay, I'll tell you what happened. I'll take the load casualty. Okay, this thing over here. So we had this engine on a tire on a particle board wheeled dolly. All right. Well, in the midst of pushing that engine around on the tire, on the dolly, on the particle board wheeled dolly, I don't know what the wheels were bad, what was going on, but one of the wheels collapsed and broke the whole particle board off. So now you got this, I don't know, 400 or 500 pound engine, I don't know what that thing weighs, on the tire going into this this 40-degree port lean, it didn't look good. So I was like, this thing's going to capsize. So Ian's over there trying to support the thing. I mean, it was a slow motion kind of capsize, So he's hanging on to it. I'm sitting there thinking, well, we got to get this. So we had to hook up the cherry picker back up, take the weight back off the engine, get it off the tire, put the, forget the wheel round business. And that was that one casualty. That was the one sketchy moment when things kind of could have gone south. But again, when it failed kind of slow, and it listed, and it wasn't really horrible. So as long as somebody was around to kind of hold on to it, I don't think anybody was ever in any real danger. I mean, the motor was a little bit danger. If I was here by myself, it would have been kind of a critical situation because I would have had to hold the engine and trying to set up a cherry picker, which, if for no other reason alone, that's a good reason why you want somebody to help you with this stuff. Don't do this by yourself. You get in some weird situation like that where you got this engine kind of half rolled over and you're, sacrifice the engine, obviously, that's what you want to do, but you don't really want to sacrifice engines. You're better off just having the buddy come over and say, hey, give me a hand with this thing in case it gets stupid, Anyway, that was the one casualty. So I hope you enjoy it, and like I said, I'll try to get some more videos when it's all up and running again. I'm sorry I couldn't take you along for the actual ride, the pull. I mean, we were out here for, I don't know, 6-7 hours easy, and to make a video of that would have been it would have been too much. I mean, we had our hands full just keeping up with the tools, finding the parts, figuring out what to do. To try to set up camera and record and edit, that just wasn't going to happen. So sorry if I misled anybody thinking they were actually see the pull happen. You get to see the result, and you get to see the aftermath. That's about the best I can do. Anyway, hope you all have a good one. Take care. Bye. Off.